Number one, I wouldn't be on this podcast if it wasn't for going through that. I don't think I would ever have, I would never have got into this work. And two, I know for a shadow of a doubt, again, it's not about me, but through the humility, I was able to make way bigger of an impact on people than I did with how I could throw a football, And so I think to people listening, it's, man, where's God placed you? And how can you be a light to him and one person at a time? And so I would say to people, when that imposter syndrome kicks in, and when those thoughts come into your mind, number one, what do you do with the thought? Do you just let it fester and get worse? Or do you take it captive and say, no, I'm not choosing to believe that, and fill it with scripture, number one. And number two, when I go speak, before I get up and speak, I have to remind myself it's not about my personal comfort. I have to remember that my message that I'm sharing is more important than me and my comfort. And so if there's one person...
Make your escape.
Hey, welcome back to another episode. You are here. You are in the right place at Last in Line Leadership Podcast, where you will be encouraged and inspired to walk in the fullness of the leader you are called to be. This is a place where you will hear about the goodness of God and the hope found in his promises to us. My prayer is that you will be empowered as a servant leader from what you hear in this episode of Last in Line Leadership. Hey, we're honored to have Alex Demczak today as our guest on Last in Line podcast. He's a former SEC quarterback for the University of Missouri Tigers. Played there for a few years, got his degree in communications. He is an inspiring communicator. He's a trainer. He has written a couple of books, actually. Wrote one called Thrive You, which is a devotional from stories from 100 collegiate and professional athletes from across the country. Then he's most recently joined up with Jon Gordon to write a book called The Sale. It's actually a fable, and he talks some about it in our episode. It's a fable about a guy going through sales and realizes what priorities matter, what things are eternal, how money and fame and status isn't all it's cracked up to be if you make that about just make that everything in your life. Alex is a top keynote speaker and has trained under the Jon Gordon companies. He delivers keynotes to various companies and universities. But Alex talks a lot about servant leadership here. And so, that fits right in our swim lane. He had some situations at the University of Missouri where he struggled. He had to fight through some desire and temptation to quit the team, but he ended up figuring out what serving was all about and came out on the other side better for it. So I'm excited. You're going to like this conversation. We talk a lot about faith, talk a lot about leadership, talk a lot about just having an eternal perspective. And it's all about a choice in how you see your situation, how you react to your situation, and how you serve in your situation. So welcome Alex Demczak to the stage at Last in Line Podcast. Alex Demczak, welcome to Last in Line Podcast, and I hope I didn't butcher that last name.
Hey, you know what? I've heard a lot bigger butcher jobs than that. So you did pretty good.
Okay, what is it?
It's Demczak.
Demczak. Okay. Well, a 50-50 shot on that.
Hey, 50-50 shot. I will say it is Ukrainian. So shout out to, I guess I don't have any family that lives in Ukraine currently, but I definitely, had a lot of ancestors in Ukraine.
Yeah.
So
that's a terrible.
Yeah.
I hope there's some, her on the horizon. I hope there's some resolution over there, peaceful resolution. Yeah. But, well, all right. So we have a mutual friend that referred you, and so you're in the hot seat on a servant leadership podcast. So I feel like that might be right in your swim lane. I'm just going to spitball and take a stab that leadership is in your sweet spot. So let's go a little bit. You're a former SEC quarterback from University of Missouri. You got into corporate America. Obviously, you wrote a couple books. You are a keynote speaker for some major corporations and universities. Jon Gordon trained. You and Jon Gordon rub elbows. You can't get a lot better than that. and you have a podcast, I think, as well. Is that right? I mean, I hit all
Yeah.
those pretty close.
You need to be in like a person who introduces people for sports games, or you need to be an announcer. I think that was pretty good.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Yeah, my
Well,
voice,
I
I
guess
don't know.
if you're a Texan, I mean, you guys probably have rodeos. You could probably call some of those, in
I
Texas, right?
would, yeah, maybe an auctioneer. I'll look into that too. No, but so I made up for the name butchering with that intro. So I guess let's put my Dr. Phil hat on. Let's get you on the couch and let's unpack Alex here real quick. I mean, kind of go through a little bit of your background and how you got to be where you are, why you chose speaking, because that's kind of your thing. I mean, is that your full-time thing? Tell the audience what you're all about, man.
Yeah, well, that's a great segue. Thanks for teeing that up for me. So I guess to go back to my college days, playing college football was kind of a dream of mine. Probably like you, like many of your listeners, I grew up a sports fanatic. I
Yeah.
loved sports, and I got the chance to walk on at University of Missouri. And as a walk on, it's kind of like you have to earn it every day, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
going into my freshman and sophomore year, life was good. I didn't really have any complaints. I was kind of living the dream, and it kind of like when you're in the zone, you're in the sweet spot of the work you're doing or what you're passionate about. It feels good. And that's where I was at. And going into my junior season, you have this yearly check-in meeting with your coaches, and it's usually a super chill meeting, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk into this meeting, and instead of one coach being there was three, so that was different than
Mm.
previous years. And I sit down, and one of the coaches is actually closing the door behind him, and so I'm like, that is not a good start to this meeting, I can tell. And so I sit down, and the coach looks right at me, and he says, Alex, I want to shoot you straight. We are bringing in a kid, actually from Texas, to take your spot. We've over scholarshiped at quarterback. And I'm telling you, man, in that moment, like football was everything to me. That was my life. Alex, the quarterback, Alex, the football player. That was kind of my identity, who I was, right? And so in that moment, he's essentially telling me, you are not good enough. And he said, you have two options as far as moving forward. Yeah, option one is your cut, like thank you, but no thank you. Option two is you can stay on as this assistant, volunteer, no pay coach. Like we could use you. I've been at the program 2.5 years, right? And so at this, he said, by the way, you need to make a decision what you want to do in this meeting right now. And so as you can imagine, like my mind is racing. I'm like, there's so many emotions. I'm mad, I'm upset, I'm confused. Like I've given half my life, like 2.5 years of my life to this, and this is what it amounts to.
Yeah,
And
can I jump in there? Because I would
yeah,
imagine to even be considered as a walk-on at Missouri, you had to be fairly serviceable in high school. So it's not like you were a scrub and a JV all the way through high school. Like it sounds like you knew what you were doing, taking
I mean,
snaps. So
I came from Illinois. It's not different than Texas. I'll say that. You're used to seeing some pretty good football in Texas.
right.
So I don't know. You're maybe giving me a little bit too much credit there. But yeah, it was a dream of mine. And to get to that point and to be part of the SEC, and you're looking across the sideline and Nick Saban's over there. I shook his hand after again, all this cool stuff, right? This pinnacle moment. And then they tell you that in that moment. And so in that moment, my mind's racing. What do I do? Do I transfer? Do I leave? Do I quit? I just felt like I was supposed to stay. And so, long story short, my entire junior season, I stayed on the team as this volunteer assistant coach. And the first day of practice, I show up and I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to make a positive out of this thing. I'm going to try to make this a good situation out of a bad. Maybe I'll be a coach. Maybe I'm going to go on to be this coach in college. They make a lot of money. They're successful. All this stuff. And I show up that first day and I'm like, you know what? They probably trust me. I'm a junior in college. This is what I'm thinking as a junior in college. I've been with the program. They're going to put me up in the press box, have me call plays, all this stuff. I show up and one of the assistant coaches, he said, Alex, I want to show you what your job's going to be. And he hands me this yellow flag. And he hands me this flag and he says, Alex, during practice, we need you to take this flag. And when someone jumps off sides, you're going to take this flag and you're going to throw it down. And the worst part is he demonstrated how to do it twice. And I was like, well, I think I can handle that.
I mean, yeah.
you know,
Give it a shot. I'll give it a shot.
I'll give it a shot there, coach. And so anyway, long story short, my entire junior season, I was in practice throwing this darn flag in street clothes while all my buddies are suited out in front of all these thousands of people living out their dream. I'm printing off copies. I'm making coffee for the coaches. I'm doing all these small tasks that, I'll be honest, man, like there were so many times where I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Like, why? Like, I'm too good. That was kind of my mentality. Like, I'm too good to be doing this. But I finally came to a point where I said, you know what? I have to just, I'm here, so I got to make the most of it. I got to add value. And so I was just there. For the first time in my life, I was slowed down, and I was able to, maybe a guy that was injured on the team, I was able to connect with. Maybe I wouldn't have ever had time for him before, but now I was just on the sideline. How can I help people and serve people? And so that entire junior season goes by, and I'll say this: the amount of just through the sheer humility of the situation, the people you connect with on the team, like the thing that the relationships that were built with guys who are playing the NFL today. I watched Thursday Night Football last night with one of my buddies, and I look back. That was also the time where I started working on my first book because I had more time. When I look at the whole situation, fast forward to my senior year, I knew that I wanted to get back on the team as this quarterback. And so as I was doing this assistant coaching, I was still working out with the team within all the NCAA guidelines. And long story short, I get back on the team my senior year as a quarterback. We go to the Citrus Bowl. We have this awesome, just like a really fun senior year. But the reason I start with that story for all your listeners is this. I had to learn for the first time that leadership, like true leadership, requires no title. Like showing up day in and day out, doing the work. Like, I don't care where you're at in the org chart, on the depth chart, it does not matter. And so I think to answer your question, what got you into speaking, man, every corporate America place I go speak to, I bring that flag because, John, like, to be honest, I don't think I would be on this podcast with you today if it wasn't for me being completely humiliated, embarrassed. Like, I got cut. Like, I was told I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
But I had to learn, man, like that's going to happen in life too. And the same with any sales team or organization, like there are setbacks. And so are you going to allow these failures to define you or refine you? And I'm not saying I did it perfectly, man, but I've tried. How can I let these moments be refining in my life so I can improve and get better in those ways?
Of course. No, that's well said, man. And you ought to consider speaking for a living. You did really well articulating that. Hey, out of trivia curiosity, wasn't by any chance Chase Daniel, was it?
So he was there probably 6 years before I was.
Oh, he's that old. Wow.
But he of course, yeah, he was there. I finished in like 2015.
He's Texas.
He was
so that's
yeah, dude, he's one of those South Lake boys, man. If he would have for sure taken my spot, no questions asked.
Okay.
But no, I've connected with Chase in the past, and he's a great dude.
That's awesome. Well, man, I guess let me ask you this too, because as you're going through, you're learning leadership the hard way, and that's really probably not something most people in the moment are going to go to a family reunion and start bragging about. But you're putting in the, paying your dues. Did anybody cross your path that even before maybe then that sort of was a picture of leadership, true leadership, servant leadership for you? Like, what in your mind kind of went off that said, I think that's what a leader looks like? Give me an idea.
Yeah, I feel like I was just blessed with an awesome family. So I had so many great examples just from a young age. But I think when I got into high school and college and I was a quarterback, I really did look up to Tim Tebow a lot and his leadership, and got the chance when I was at Mizzou to work out with him and his dad actually for about 2.5 hours. And so we're throwing around, we're working out. It was just us three. It was really special for me as, just imagine with your role model for 2.5 hours. But what was funny about that story is, and this is a quick little leadership thing I learned from him, is, somehow I guess it got out on Twitter that he was on campus. And so we're working out and it gets out on Twitter, Tim Tebow was at Mizzou campus or whatever. And so these two team nutritionists, they saw that and got into the facility. It was like 8:00 at night. No one else was there. It was locked. Somehow get in. And of course, they never would have said hi to me normally in a normal day, but they come run up and, oh, Alex, what a coincidence to see you here. How great to see you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but whatever.
All right. So my audience is perfectly fine with you admitting that you leaked that on Twitter. Like they're fine with you saying that
I did not leak it on Twitter. I don't know who did. Someone spotted him, or I don't know how it happened.
I'm just kidding. That's
he was
funny.
there for, I think, SEC Nation the next day or something. But anyway.
That's great.
But yeah, we're in the weight room. These two nutritionists walk up and what do they say? Alex, can we get you anything? Can we get you a protein shake from the weight room? And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me. They would never do this. But I'm like, you know what? I got to take advantage of this situation. So I was like, you know what? I'll do strawberry banana. That sounds great. And they looked at Tim, and he's a really humble, nice guy. And he was like, well, what kind of shakes do you guys have? And they said the brand, and I'm not going to repeat it, but they said the brand of the shake, and he said, I'm so sorry, but I would never put those complex sugars in my body. And these poor nutritionists, they didn't know what to say because they're studying nutrition. And here's like this celebrity telling them, you probably shouldn't give that to your athletes.
Right.
And
you're like, so never mind on my order. I don't want it either.
Dude, that's literally what I said. I was literally like, I'm good too. I'm watching my figure as well. And so I think what I learned
Wow.
in that moment is that a guy like that, he knew what he stood for. And so in that moment, a free protein shake, he was on Good Morning America that morning. He flew to Nashville. He flew to Columbia, Missouri, and when we were together. And it's like he could have easily been so hungry, but he's like, no, I'm going to forgo that because I want to be the best version of myself. And he was on the strict keto diet. And so I have always remembered that lesson from him, that when you know what you stand for, decision making becomes crystal clear.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's good. I mean, not a bad guy to look at, and kind of base your leadership around some of his qualities. Not a bad one to go by. Um, I guess along your journey, tell me how, like, talk about after college. Like, so I'm assuming went to work in corporate America, kind of punching a clock, so to speak. Because I'm going to assume, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I'm going to assume you didn't start out right out of college with a speaking, business and a book deal. So, man, what kind of refined you, as you say, along the way before you sort of are living the dream of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I started in corporate America, like you said, doing sales for about 5 years at a great company in the mortgage industry, actually. And what's really cool about this story and the way you framed that is Jon Gordon spoke at Mizzou. He's, number 5 keynote speaker in America, spoke at Mizzou when I was there. So we connected and then we just stayed in touch. And so I just sent him an email and said, hey, I would love to do the work you're doing. How can can I help? And he said, are you willing to work for free? And I said, absolutely. And so literally I would start doing things for free, sales oriented type, LinkedIn, all this different stuff for him. And what's cool is just as we built that trust together and he saw that I really wanted this, he would start to give me more and more opportunities. So as I was in corporate America doing sales on the side for 4 years, I did a side hustle. I started doing small speaking engagements. I go to my local, whatever, church, local Fellowship of Christian Athletes, local school, and just speak
Yeah.
on whatever and just get reps. And I would do it for free. And I would just show up and I would put in the work. And so 4 years of doing that with, the full-time job, December of 2021, December 21st, actually, I walked out of the corporate America doors for the last day and I haven't looked back. And what I tell people is that, like, to your point, I didn't just come out of college with these things. I took a public speaking class at Mizzou and in college. So that kind of got my juices flowing.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell people all the time, it's like, is there a direction? If there's something over here that you're passionate about, but you're in a current job and you're like, you know what, I really want to do this over here. How can you move in a step towards that direction? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's not quitting your job tomorrow, because I didn't. I did it for
Yeah.
4 years. I mean, I didn't do it perfectly, but at some point it got to the point where I just couldn't handle it. If I knew long term I wanted to be a speaker and author, I had to give up because honestly, my full time job, which is a great employer, it was a crutch for me. It was, I need the insurance, the health benefits, all this stuff. At the end of the day, I had to say, you know what, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna bet on myself. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that would be my message to people.
Yeah.
If you have this burning desire, don't think you have to quit tomorrow, because there's really valuable things. I learned so many good things in 4 years of a sales job that now really jump started my speaking career, because a big part of speaking in a lot of ways is sales and marketing and putting out content. It's not, I mean, to get on the stage, there's a lot of things that go into that. It's not just you say, I'm going to speak and people are knocking down your door to book you. It's like, no, no, no,
Sure.
no. It's sending out free copies of your book to people. It's
Yeah.
being on podcasts. It's doing all these things. So as you know as
Yeah.
well. So
Well, I agree. Like, I mean, I've been in sales for like 20, I guess 5 or 6 years. And,
wow.
I've one of my bosses years ago said, all sales is really the transfer of passion from
Mm,
one person to another. And really that's what you're doing in speaking. You've got a passionate calling, something to say that's meaningful, and you're just transferring that to an audience. And really that's what we're doing in sales. So that was good training. And I will say, you say you worked for free. I would even go far enough to say you got a PhD on the streets, which you would have had to pay for that piece of paper if you'd have gone and got a doctorate in a college. You actually got a doctorate from Jon Gordon that didn't cost you
ooh.
anything except time.
I
So,
and no one's ever told me that, but I love how you break that down, because you're right. It's like I learned things, helping him, learning about the back end of the business from him and seeing how he runs it in an efficient way that I would have never learned if I was on YouTube, right? And so I think
yeah,
that's the message to people as well. It's like, you have someone that you see out there doing what you want to do. It's like, reach out to them, see what you can do for free to add value. And I have a buddy he's a YouTuber, and he has done the same thing for this like really, 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 really famous YouTuber with millions of followers. And he's just gone in and he's added value. He adds value. And now his channels are going on through the roof. So it
That's
just comes
awesome.
to adding value to people in that way.
Yeah. Well, and this is a good segue into something that can you really segue into something if it wasn't planned? So we'll table that for another day. But I wouldn't really plan to go this route right now. But talking about you had to get around him to get like him, and so talking about our faith. This is faith podcast. I mean, it's a servant leadership podcast.
Mm.
So to get like God, we got to get around him. We got to get near. We got to get close. We got to do these disciplines of praying and reading and really getting around the body of Christ. Like, talk about your faith journey a little bit. It sounds like you grew up in a solid foundation of a family around faith. What I guess being in college at a big school and being in athletics, that's got to be tugging on you in different directions, and there's plenty of temptation. So what was the hardest part about being kind of locked into your faith going through that season of life, and what are you proudest of?
Yeah, man, that's a loaded but great question. And yeah, going back to faith journey, grew up in an amazing, just amazing parents that just raised us, me and my sister, in the Word and around church and youth group and vacation Bible, all these different things from a young age. And so by the time I got to college and I had a firm foundation, largely because my parents helped me foster that. And but yeah, I would say the hardest thing when I got to college was, that line of wanting to be part of as close as I can with guys on the team, but there's a certain level where, with some of the things that they're doing, you're like, man, I can't support those. So just like I remember just feeling bad, like, man, I want to go to this party because I want to like just hang out with the boys, but is that the right thing? And so I always struggled with that, and still, have worked through that. But, I would say, man, something I'm proud of. I mean, just, I don't know, man, that the whole story of being brought low and coming through to the end is not a testament to me, it's a testament to God and the ways that he works. And because the thing is, like, God, sometimes maybe he's not on your timing or on time, but he's never late. And I just think, to your point on getting around people who just push you in your faith, it's like I was just at the gym 30 minutes ago with one of the pastors at the church, and it's like, man, that was the highlight of my day, being with him, just, and rubbing shoulders with people who, between bench press sets, we're talking about Randy Alcorn's book called Heaven, and how it's been, just really helpful for both of us. And it's like, those are the conversations that I love having, that feed my soul. And
that's good.
So yeah, man, none of us are perfect, but I just think, gosh, like that's like a muscle. The more you're working out, the more you're around it, the more you're
That's right. And you said loaded question, and I guess it could have been loaded if I'd have said, what are you most ashamed of? And so we didn't go there. So I teed you up nicely to walk into what you're proud of. And the other thing too is, what I like about your story and the yellow flag, I like that you carry that into your speaking engagements as sort of a prop and a symbol, but that's really cool because it's a good reminder to where you came from. You could have entered the transfer portal if it was even a thing back then. And I know it wasn't, but you didn't like just trash the idea of, I'm on a college football team and I'm not doing the things college football players get to do on a Saturday. So you had an opportunity to pull the ripcord and jump out of that situation, but you stuck it out. And I think, to the audience, that's a huge takeaway, is like, you just knew that the grind, you were all about the grind, and you didn't really necessarily care about the result at the moment. You knew you were supposed to be there and you were going to put in time, and maybe that spoke volumes to your coaches, maybe to your teammates. Maybe they looked at you and you're like, this guy has every reason to be terrible attitude, every reason to be, in a bad mood, but he's serving. So we may never know who that impacted, but I got to say, people, to whoever's listening, you may not get to know. It's all about the grind and how keeping your head down and doing the right things, and somebody sees it. Always somebody's watching. So, hey, before we get back to the conversation here with our guest, I want to thank one of our sponsors, a new partner, Uncommon, which is a ministry that is equipping and empowering great men to become the husbands, the fathers, and leaders they were called to be. Go to uncommon.org. That's UNCOMMEN.org. Check out their content. Go to YouVersion, download their devotionals. Great team, great people, great men, and they're out there for you. They're out there with great content, and they're out there to encourage us to be the men we were called to be. So I want to thank TJ and his team at Uncommon. So now let's get back to the conversation with our great guest here at Last in Line Podcast.
That's so good, because that's thanks for saying that. That's a huge encouragement to me. But I think we are so we emphasize the worldly like treasures of how can I gain and how can I this platform. But like, man, what, and something I've been just reading lately and how I've been convicted of is like, how can I look forward to like heavenly treasures? And how often am I thinking about that? Like, when Jesus says, lay up your treasures in heaven, how often am I practically doing that? Or am I just trying to accumulate? And so you saying that means a ton. But I totally agree. Number one, I wouldn't be on this podcast if it wasn't for going through that. I don't think I would ever have, I would never have got into this work. And two, I know for a shadow of a doubt, again, it's not about me, but through the humility, I was able to make way bigger of an impact on people than I did with how I could throw a football, And so I think to people listening, it's, man, where's God placed you, and how can you be a light to him? And one person at a time. I think, because we think about social media following and how can I go viral? It's like, well, what about like one person at a time? Like Jesus made his ministry. He'd go out and heal and help people. Like, yeah, he spoke to crowds, but he also was just like there for the person that touched his cloak. And he said, who touched, And so what does it look like for us, one person at a time, to just be that light, to share God's love one person at a time?
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, you sound like you were pretty mature, maybe beyond your years when you were going through some of that. Cause in the flesh, most, I don't know, 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, like I said, had multiple options on how to react to that. But did it ever enter your mind at the time that I think this might be a test? Like, did you ever consider that? Like, I don't know if that's pretty mature thinking. I don't know if I'd think that as an adult. Like, were you ever going down that mental thought track?
Yeah, we'll say it was just by God's grace. When I found out the news that I was cut, and I remember, I essentially went in my truck, I parked somewhere. I remember just crying, feeling humiliated. I do remember to this day, like a peace, in staying there and not, leaving, even though it was like humiliating, it was like really hard for me to accept, especially because the person who took my spot wasn't better than me. So that was even harder. And I'm not saying that in a braggadocious way. Many people were like, hey, yeah, why did you, so absolutely that was hard. And that was a very low point, because now in practice, I had to make him and other quarterbacks look better, right? While I'm on the sidelines doing nothing. And so that was hard. But I definitely felt peace that there'd be like little things that I think God was speaking through other people. They would say, hey man, I see you sticking with it. Like, thanks for sticking it out. Like these little comments people would make, or like, man, I would have been out of here. Like, it's really cool you stuck with it. Like that one comment would like get me through the next week, because I was so like, what am I doing here? But just to hear that validation. And so, yeah, man, it was really special.
That's cool.
Hard.
Yeah. Well, so I noticed you wrote a devotional, right? Kind of around like a sports theme, right? Is it, let's go into some of that, and then let's go into your book called The Sale, that I think what you wrote with co-author with Jon Gordon. Dude, did you ever consider yourself an author? And what sort of feedback are you hearing from maybe both of those?
Yeah. So the first book is called Thrive You, and it's a daily devotional book. It's 100 different athletes, college and professional athletes, that I put together their stories in kind of like a daily devotional format. So that's been so fun, just because that's kind of what helped me get into speaking as well, at youth groups, things like that. So that was fun, because I got to feature like 100 different friends of mine. Great. Some of them I didn't know, but for the most part, I'm friends with all of them in there. So that was really fun. And then The Sale, I've been like we talked about, and I've been on Jon Gordon's leadership team for about 7 years now, where he's mentored me, and I've been able to learn from him. And so when we started working on this idea, he has 25 books. And so this was his 26th. And my second, when we kind of started working on this, it was just like, how cool is this? The message of the book of building trust that we fostered is now the message of this book, The Sale. And so it's not just a book about sales. It's a fable that we wrote about a main character named Matt, who's in sales. And long story short, things are great at work, but terrible at home. His wife pretty much says, you need to start providing for us. You need to provide. He goes, providing? I made more money this month than most people make in a year. Like, don't tell me I'm not providing. Like, that's his stance. And she's like, no. I need you to be here for our family. Like, if something doesn't change, like, I'm changing. We're getting divorced. So he has this ultimatum, but things at work are going great. And he's about to land the sale of a lifetime, why it's called The Sale. this sale, he's in a very lucrative industry. It would make him $7 million. So that's, I don't know about you, but for me, it's a lot of money. I know where you come from, but $7 million sale. The only problem is to move forward with the sale, him and his team would have to lack integrity in some pretty major ways. And so there's this storyline of, does he do it? Does he not? And during the process, there's this mentor named Randy who teaches him these laws and principles about integrity, about building trust. And so I can't tell your listeners what ends up happening because I'll check out the book, but it's so cool to see the transformation of the main character when it comes to these different principles about integrity and how, man, it really sets you up for the long haul in that way. And so that's why this book has been so fun in corporate America and speaking, because it applies to any industry, you know, like building trust, being a cohesive team. Like these are all things that every sales manager in America wants for their team. And so it's just been so fun, whether it's a sports team or an organization, to share some of these principles. And then what's really cool about these two books, maybe, and I know you're an author as well. About a year and a half ago, I started a company called writemybooks.com. And so what we do is we help people write and publish their book in a 16-week process. And so that's so fun because I love promoting my books and speaking on those, but I also love the other people. I love helping, you know, them share their story. And we have a team now of people that are writers and editors and project managers, and it's so fun. So if any of your listeners are like, man, I want to write a book someday, don't know where to start, would love to talk with them as well, just because we just feel like there's so much news in the world, but man, we just want to tell more story and push awesome stories forward.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be a market for that. I'm sure it's not the only company that helps people do that, but I would think that there's a good market and a niche spot for, you know, just kind of that pocket of demographic, or, you know, a person who's sort of starting out. I don't know, but did you start that by yourself, that company?
I'm the co-founder with Will Severns. He lives in Kansas City and I live in Columbia, Missouri. So yeah, we're the co-founders, and yeah, it's just been so cool how God's blessed that in the year and a half we've, you know, been operating that and growing the team. And it's just been so fun. And ultimately it's like how God is connecting us with people that they have a story. And we're able, whether it's ghostwriting or editing, all these different things, helping these people get their message out into the world. It's just been so fun. Yeah.
So about the book, The Sale, did you incorporate, let's say this, how did you incorporate maybe some of your own challenges or struggles maybe to this point, and what did you maybe find out about yourself through that process, or what did Matt teach you, even though he's this, you know, fictional guy, but what through his life did you maybe take away from it?
Yeah,
that's a weird question. Is that a weird question?
It's a great question, because we wrote the main character Matt in a way that we hope everyone would resonate in some way with Matt. And so yeah, I'm excited for you to get the book as well, because I think, you know, in some ways I was like, man, I'm kind of writing Matt about myself in some ways. Because last September I'd wake up in the morning and I would have this racing heartbeat, and it was the weirdest thing. Like I've never had anything like that before. Racing heartbeat, wasn't even thinking about anything. And I go to the doctor and they do an EKG. They're like, everything looks fine. And they're like, what are you doing for work? And I named off the 8 juggling things I was trying to juggle. And they're like, well, that's your problem. And they're like, if you don't, they said this, they said, if you don't scale back, this is going to scale you back.
Really?
And so that was I had to, just listen and take that. And I had to make some changes. And so that was in September. A few months later, I ended up quitting my job. A large reason because I had kind of that, whoa, what's going on? I'm trying to do too much. And so yeah, I think in a lot of ways I can resonate with that main character of like trying to have success, trying to do these things, but at what cost, you know, and at what cost. And I think a lot of us can maybe find ourselves there, like, man, this pursuit of this good thing, man, are we not leaving room for the great things? And I think for you and I, you know, it's our faith. That's where, man, what a shame it would be to like do all these things, make all this money, have success, but then look back and be like, whoa, my daughter doesn't know me, you know, like how sad would that be? Like you'd give away all the money in the world to change. So man, I think that's kind of the message of the book. And for leaders, whether they're a Christian or not, you know, and where they're at in their faith journey, you know, everyone has faith. You know, some people have faith that there is no God. Some people have faith in God. And so everyone to some extent has faith, right?
Right.
So when you really think about it, whether they want to admit it or not, they believe in something. And so I think this book is hopefully for anyone who's just like, man, maybe they're on this path to success, but it's like, at what cost? And are you thinking about the way in which you're leading and living your life?
Yeah. Well, good. And I'm glad you kind of mentioned some of Matt's journey in the book, because When you want to blame me, it's going to be your fault that I brought this up. So we're going here. So did you ever have sort of a hard conversation with your wife along the journey? Like, were you juggling too many balls in the air, and were you neglecting certain responsibilities, or just kind of talk about fatherhood and husbandry? I don't know if you have kids, but talk about, if you don't, what you know about fatherhood and what you want to be like. Let's go that route. Let's talk about maybe those hard conversations you might have had with your wife, or just maybe some moments where you felt a little friction.
Yeah, I think like naturally I'm kind of the dreamer. And so a lot of times when I bring things, to my wife, like, oh, what do you think? She's like, well, how is this logistically going to work out? She's smart in that way. And so, but no, I would say the conversations usually are revolved around like, wow, do you think you can handle taking on another thing? And her wisdom in that way. So no, when I say I can relate to Matt, it wasn't quite at the extent of what it is in the book.
Sure.
But when it comes to, I do have a 2-year-old daughter, and which is so fun and crazy at times. But man, I just think about, who do I want to be when it comes to being a father? I mean, man, if I could try to display Jesus and be present. I think even when I think about my speaking business, I have buddies who are doing 150, 200 speaking engagements a year, and they're not home. And I just don't desire that. And so I think even just having healthy rhythms of great community and, being at church every Sunday with my family and being in small group and all these things, man, that's what it's about. And God will provide, just like he provided manna. He'll provide our daily bread that we need. And so to try to get caught up in how much can I make this year, that it's just like, oh man, it's exhausting. It's a hamster wheel. And when you can get off that hamster wheel and be like, God, I'm open to what you have for me. Show me where to go. It's pretty cool what he'll show you. Cause I did that when I quit my job. I was like, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I just hope that I pray that you'll provide. And it's just pretty cool how God shows up. And when you, and again, I haven't done it perfectly, but it's a daily thing. Are you trusting? Are you depending on him? And so I to be able to pass that down to my future kiddos as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sounds like you had a good model growing up. Sounds like your family probably exhibited some of the character that you're going to take into fatherhood and, even further. Cause I would imagine you're probably not done with one. I don't know. I'm just putting words in your mouth, and I'm just like prophetically speaking a huge family over you now. I have 4, so I can say that. But
nice.
I know you're a little behind. So I did I posted something today, not when they're listening to this. So probably a week or so before people are actually listening to this, but about imposter syndrome. Sure, you've heard it's kind of a buzzword last couple of years. Maybe it's been around longer. We just didn't call it that. But when you mentioned the people doing the 200 speaking engagements a year, and obviously you made, by choice, you kind of are going a different direction, which I don't blame you, good for you. You ever suffer with that? Maybe sticking to that theme, like how do you help somebody through, man, I just don't, man, what do I have to say? What right do I have to give suggestions or advice or encouragement? Look at my life. It's been a wreck. It may not be now, but here's where I came from. And, I don't know, speak to that, because I think it's a pretty popular condition people are going through.
Yeah, that's a great word. And one thing that I've had to come back to, when I first got into speaking, I battled with all those thoughts of, man, am I the right person to be here? Like, I'm speaking at this association of dental workers association, or like, why do they want me? Like, one of my first ever speaking engagements was to a group of 7 CEOs, and there was only 7 people in the room. I'm like, holy smokes. Like, I just turned 30. So at the time I was probably like 27. I'm like, why do these guys want to listen to me?
Wow.
But I will say the feedback I got after that talk was so encouraging for them to say, listen, your age does not matter. It's your message that you need to continue to share all over the country. And so that's what kind of sent me off. And so I would say to people, when that imposter syndrome kicks in, and when those thoughts come into your mind, number one, what do you do with the thought? Do you just let it fester and get worse? Or do you take it captive and say, no, I'm not choosing to believe that? And fill it with scripture, number one. And number two, when I go speak, before I get up and speak, I have to remind myself it's not about my personal comfort. I have to remember that my message that I'm sharing is more important than me and my comfort. And so if there's one person in that audience, if I'm at a high school and there's one kid who maybe is struggling and just needs encouragement. Not saying anything special about me, but if bringing me in and me saying something clicks with them and changes the trajectory of their day, their month, their life, then I would hope that I would not stay comfortable in those moments. I hope I would rise above that and say, you know what, screw imposter syndrome. They asked me to come speak here. I'm going to give it my best while I'm here. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be obedient in that way. And that's all I can control. And what happens after that, they can boo me off the stage if they want. They can throw tomatoes. I don't know. But I'm going to show up and do the work that I feel like I've been called to. I think anyone can approach that and apply that to their work that they do, whether it's sales or speaking or being the garbage man. It doesn't matter. Like it applies.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that just reinforces, and it's amazing how God can confirm something through somebody else when you least expect it. Because I told my son, who is a youth pastor, and he, gets a little nervous and a little anxiety before he preaches on a Sunday. And I said, hey, just in case you're ever getting nervous, like, you understand that your message isn't about you. It's not about, because pride is really what all that fear is attached to. The fear of speaking in front of people or presenting is really just your pride, and you don't want to look stupid or embarrassed. But if you make it more about the people that are hearing it and what you have to say that you feel like God gave you to say, you're just a vessel. And you know what? That sort of takes the pressure off. Like, that frees you up to know somebody in the audience is getting something. God's using you. So it's not about you. And so I told him that, and that's exactly what you're saying. And I think, there's comfort in that, because let's face it, public speaking is probably one of the biggest fears known to man out there right now. It's not spiders, probably. It's public speaking. Like, some people would rather hold a handful of tarantulas than get up in front of 10 people. And so, I mean, would you agree with that? How'd you get over that? Do you have any anxiety? I mean, I know you took a class, but
no, that's funny. Yeah, tarantulas would be terrifying for me. So I would speak in front of thousands, and
of course you would.
And
so would I.
Just not to hold a spider, but I think, the public speaking class and when I was in college, I think revealed to me that I enjoyed it. And like, I was in a class with like 27 students, and 25 of the kids in the class dreaded it. And they were like communication majors, but they still they did not like doing that. And I was like, wow, I'm a communication major, business minor, and 25 out of the 27 kids that are communication majors are like nervous, scared, don't want to do it. Yeah. So I heard this quote soon after that was like, find something that other people are either like scared to do or not good at, and like double down on that. I think it was like a John Maxwell quote. And I'm like, well, I think speaking could fit into that. A lot of people don't want to do it. They kind of just want to like find someone to do it for them or bring someone in. And it's just been really fun. And in a lot of ways, speaking for me kind of, it's like a similar endorphin rush that like football training was. You prepare for the opponent in football, you watch film, you get to know their ins and outs, then you travel to the event, travel to the stadium, you show up, you get suited up, you go out and you perform, you have like the rush after the event. And so it's the same for speaking, man, which is so fun for me, because I feel like I can still keep that athletic momentum and that mindset going, man, because it really does carry over in big ways.
Yeah, and you've got some pretty impressive logos on your website, so you may have to put your money where your mouth is on this one. Spoke for the Reds, like Cincinnati Reds. You were tell me about that experience. I'm a baseball nut, so
cool.
Audience, you can ignore this. This is for me here, but talk about some of that and how rewarding that might have been.
Yeah, so cool, man. It was actually during the pandemic, and then I think I'm actually grew up a Cardinals fan, so yeah, Reds was awesome, but more recently in the past few months, I did a thing for the St. Louis Cardinals. Wow. They're kind of their beverage staff. And so it was at Busch Stadium. It was pretty special. And Paul Goldschmidt, the first baseman, awesome dude. He got a hold of the sale, and I got a signed copy to him. And
no way.
Reached out and said, man, this is awesome. So he loved it. So that was cool to just hear that from a big leaguer and stuff like that.
He went to high school like 15 minutes down the road from me.
Oh, no way.
Oh yeah. The Woodlands High School. Yeah. So I don't know if you talked to him, but let him know. Yeah. I know I like that guy a lot. So he got your book. That's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's cool. Yeah. It was he wasn't there for my talk, but someone that was on staff who like is in the locker room every day. I was like, hey, can you give this to your boy? And he's like, oh,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. But yeah, man, it's just in those moments when you step into that arena, you're like, wow, what am I doing here? I don't deserve to be here. But it's like when you show up and do what you feel like you're called to do, it's just cool to hear some of the feedback that people will give you, because you're just like, wow, this was confirming on why I showed up here and did this.
Yeah. Well, so give me some ideas on, in the audience, what are you hearing? What are some of the feedbacks you're hearing from maybe people who have read the sale, some of your speaking engagements? Because I would imagine, we've seen a snapshot of what those, speaking engagements look like today, but what are some of the feedback that you're hearing about aha moments in the audience?
Yeah, man, it's so cool. I would say it starts in a lot of ways with people who read the book. I just get emails, texts, all kinds of reach outs, people that reach out, just saying how they really resonated with the story and how, kind of some people it kind of rattled them a little bit and got to them in a good way, and made them think about some things in their own life. And that was the goal. That was the whole goal of the book, is that when someone reads it, they become introspective of their own life and how can they make changes and how can they live a life of integrity. And that's the message of the book. And so I would say on that front, it's just so fun to hear from people. You write a book, you hear what people think of it. But then when they ask you, hey, I love the message of the book, now can you come in and speak to my team? Like, it's such an honor. And I don't take that lightly. And so I think just hearing, from these speaking engagements, you meet so many people, whether it's former athletes in the audience who come up to you and are like, man, that flag thrower story, that was me. I went through the same thing. You just connect with people on that level. And I just think, man, it's the relationships, the people that you meet. There's so many people that I go out and speak at an event. Afterwards, they come up and they're like, you know what? I've been wanting to write a book. And before I was kind of just like, cool, we'll keep working hard. But now I have like a resource where I can be like, hey, our team would love to get on a call with you, just hear about what you want to do. We'd love to make it happen. So just so many God things, man, orchestrated, just been so cool. So.
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine there being much better of a compliment than someone read the book and then say, hey, I want you to come share this, or I want you to come speak at our, company. Like that's pretty good reinforcement that you're onto something, when they want you to show up and want more of what you have to say. Well, as we kind of close up shop a little bit and put a bow on this, maybe you could land the plane for the audience a little bit and give them some solid takeaway for adversity and resilience. I mean, you lived it. You wrote about it, you speak about it. So other than what we've talked about to this point, is there anything that maybe we've left out that you think might have somebody leave different than when they sat down to listen to this?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways I could take that question, but I would say the biggest thing that comes to mind as you were saying that is God has us each in our own lanes. He has us exactly where he has you and I exactly where we're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And every moment that we spend comparing our lives to others and looking to social media and all these other things for gratification and looking around and saying, why can't I have that or this or that, or I deserve this or that, or I need this or that, right? We do that. We do those things and kind of get entitlement. A quote that I love is comparison is the thief of joy. And comparison is the thief of joy. And for anyone listening,
100%.
Yeah, just remember that as you go into your day, your week, or whatever, however you're listening to this, it's like comparison is the thief of joy. Understand the blessings and recognize the blessings that you have. You don't have to do all these things in your life. You get to, you get the privilege to show up and do your job, to have ears to listen to this podcast, and it's like, man, just remember that you are a blessing to be a blessing to others. And don't forget that in your leadership. Yeah.
Well, my audience knows you use the D word that I hate, and it's ugly stepbrother entitlement. You use the D word deserve. And that one gets all over me, as I'm sure it does you, but the entitlement and deserve, that we're plagued with it right now in society. And our next generation, I would say, is the recipient of some of that. And hopefully we can change, course correct and change the narrative that they're being force fed right now. So tell us where to find you. Tell us how to hire you. Tell us where to buy the book. I mean, all those things that we need to know to hear more about your story.
Yeah, thanks. So you can get the book anywhere books are sold. The Sale, thesalebook.com is the website. But my speaking website is just alexspeaking.com. So that's where you can find that. And for anyone that is like, you know what, I would love to write a book someday, or I know someone that wants to write a book, it's writemybooks.com is where you can find us. We'd love to hear your story and how we can help you launch it into the world. So yeah, man, super grateful to be on here today.
Cool. Is there a hyperlink at all for Write My Books on your main website? Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
So, and I can shoot that over to you as well, so you have it.
No, it's good. And I'll put it in the show notes. So, hey, I appreciate it, man. It's been awesome to meet you. I mean, God doesn't make accidents, and he did this for a reason. And it's been a blessing to really cross paths with you. And I shout out to the man, the myth, the legend, Jason Romano from the Sports Spectrum for connecting us. He's a great man, and we love what he does. So, audience, he's been Alex Demczak. See, I got it right. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.
Make your escape.